What the Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning. Just taking a moment to talk a little bit about the NFC and kind of wrap up the discussion of how the NFC teams are going to finish out. We have a discussion on the NFC West today, a division that probably is going to be the most competitive among NFC this year. They've got three teams at the top that are probably going to cannibalize each other, and then they have one team that's just going to get absolutely devoured by everybody that they play because of the loss of their elite quarterback. So the divisions that they had to play this year, NFC South, which will be two relatively difficult teams for all the teams in the division, and a couple of guys that they have a chance to beat up on. Unfortunately, that would be the Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. And then you're going to get some West on West action this year, AFC West versus NFC West. Arguably the two most competitive divisions in all of the NFL this year, and they're going at each other's throats. So, let's just jump right into it, starting with the Super Bowl 56 reigning champions, the LA Rams. So, right out the gate, some 50-50 games that they have. They have a really tough schedule, but they lost some pieces that made their team really good last year. 50-50 games include Buffalo, Arizona twice, San Francisco twice, Dallas, Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Kansas City, Las Vegas, Green Bay, Denver, the Chargers. So right out the gate, that is an incredibly tough schedule. But every one of those teams is also thinking that the Rams are going to be a tough opponent, and they still will be. They still have Aaron Donald. They still have Jalen Ramsey. They've re-signed Cooper Kupp, which is really strange because it seems like he's getting less money than Christian Kirk is to play for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But again, still being paid millions of dollars, more than $20 million a year for the next few years. They've made a extension agreement with Stafford. And then they also have brought on guys like Allen Robinson, and they still have Cam Akers in the backfield. So, notable additions to the team: Allen Robinson, Bobby Wagner out of Seattle, the last man of the Legion of Boom to leave. They've got Logan Bruss, a guard in the draft, Jacoby Durant, a corner in the draft, and Kyron Williams, a running back in the draft. Now, notable, they didn't have any first-round picks, and I think these guys were all third-round onward picks because they have basically leveraged their future for the now, and it paid off last year. They won the Super Bowl. And you still have Stafford, who is really just now in his prime. He probably has at least 4 to 5 more years of prime football, and I do think he'll end his career with the Rams, given that they have bent over backwards to try and give him a team that could help him seal his legacy as a Hall of Fame career. So my ceiling for them, just because of the absolute insanity of their schedule, there's no way they win all of these games. 12-5 is my ceiling for them. 7-10 would be the lowest. I still think they're going to have a winning season. I don't think they're going to approach that floor, but if things happen, if you end up with injuries, if Stafford goes down, if you lose Kupp for a spell, I don't know how that team's going to function. I do have them finishing 11-6, which is actually going to tie another team that we're going to talk about, but I do think they're going to hold the tiebreakers over them when the season is all said and done. Next team I want to talk about is the Cliff Kingsbury-led Cardinals, who have gotten progressively better every single year after I believe it was 5-10-1 and then a 9-8 season to just barely miss the postseason. And finally last year where they started hot, I think they went 8-1 or 8-0 to start the season, and then they kind of fell apart and ended up going 11-6, but still made the playoffs, where they got absolutely embarrassed by their division rival LA Rams in the wild card round. But again, it's all been improvement. And Kingsbury kind of has this legacy going back all the way to when he was an offensive coordinator and then as the head coach of Texas Tech. He has had a lot of chances to work with really talented quarterbacks. Case Keenum, Patrick Mahomes, just to name a couple of them there. But again, you're running into this issue where he has historically had great offenses because of his air raid scheme, and he just completely ignores defense. And last year they fell apart completely on the defensive end of the ball, and people figured out the air raid towards the end last year, and they had some unforgivable games. The fact that they lost to the 1-11-1 Detroit Lions last year in Detroit was inexcusable. And certainly could have changed who they played in the wild card round if they had won that game. But anyways, just to talk a little bit about them, their 50-50 games this year are Kansas City, Las Vegas, the LA Rams twice, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Minnesota, San Francisco twice, the Chargers, Denver, Tampa Bay, and New England. So that's not an easy schedule. I feel like their ceiling is going to be that 11-6 because it just depends on which team shows up and if they've made big strides. They are losing DeAndre Hopkins for the first 6 games of the season due to PED use. They did pick up Marquise Brown out of the Baltimore Ravens, which I think was a stupid trade, but they still managed to get a quality receiver, or what should be a quality receiver, and a guy who's a lot younger than DeAndre Hopkins is, and maybe a staple of the team for a while. But notable signings for them, Marquise Brown, they did re-sign James Conner, A.J. Green, and Zach Ertz. Ertz got like a 3-year extension, which makes the first selection they had in the draft kind of strange with the top overall tight end prospect in Trey McBride. Then they also got Cameron Thomas and Myjai Sanders to offset some of the losses on defense. And then one of the late round picks, Keontae Ingram, he should be backing up James Conner at running back position. They lost Chase Edmonds and Christian Kirk to South Florida teams, and then they also lost Chandler Jones and Malcolm Butler on defense. So again, their ceiling 11-6, their floor probably 6-11. I don't think they're going to get there, but if things go poorly for them and they end up if they go 6-11, let me put it this way, it's going to be a bunch of one-score games that just don't go their way. But they're still going to be competitive in most of the games they play. I do have them finishing the season with 9-8, being a fringe playoff team. So we'll see what happens with them. A lot of questions surrounding them. I just think they are going to suffer from having a tougher schedule than what they had last year. And again, Kingsbury, he's probably going to take a step back. I don't think they should look to fire him this year. I think he's on the hot seat right now, but I think that's not the best idea for them. He has done wonders for that franchise. And remember, they used to be a bottom dweller for about 5 or 6 years before they got him. So I think they should stick with him and see what they've got for at least a few more years. And if he just stays in this mediocrity level, then they can get rid of him. But moving on, you have the Seattle Seahawks. Whew. The Seahawks lost Russell Wilson. This is going to be a bad year. They are going to be competing for a top 5 draft spot next year. They're going to be one of the worst teams on paper this year. It would surprise me if they do well. But just to kind of talk about their 50-50s, they could steal a game from the Rams, the Cardinals, or the 49ers. I don't know that I think they do that more than just one of those teams. Other 50-50 games, when we're talking about it being Atlanta, Detroit, the Giants, Carolina, and the Jets, I don't think they're going to win all of those, but I don't think they lose them all either. Unfortunately, I think 2 of their wins are going to come against the Falcons and Carolina. They get both of those games at home, and it's really tough for road teams to travel to those games. They did get Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris in their trade with the Denver Broncos, as well as a slew of first-round picks, which they did use this year. They've also gotten in free agency Marquise Goodwin, Uchenna Nwosu, and Quandre Diggs. And in the draft, they did proceed to take the guy that I still think the Falcons should have taken in Charles Cross. Then they also got Boye Mafe, Ken Walker, Abraham Lucas, another lineman. Just blows my mind that they waited until after Russell Wilson was gone to build up that line. And then Kobe Bryant, a corner for him. Notable losses again, Russell Wilson, they finally lost the last member of the Legion of Boom and Bobby Wagner. Adrian Peterson, I'll be honest, I didn't even remember he was on the team last year, but he's gone now. Carlos Dunlap, another big loss for him. Gerald Everett at tight end, so they don't have a decent tight end anymore, and DJ Reed. They really have a lot of holes to fill. It's going to be the Drew Lock and Geno Smith show because they haven't made a move for Baker, and they don't want to make a move for Baker. If they did add Baker, I think their fortunes would change a little bit. They still have DK Metcalf, a wide receiver. Oh, and who is their other guy? It's escaping me, but they have at least 2 wide receivers that are good. They still have Rashad Penny in the backfield, who should start the season, only to probably be overtaken by Ken Walker eventually. But again, they have some talent. It's just a matter of they're not going to have a good general in a really tough division with really tough opponents. So their ceiling, I think it's 6-11. Their floor is probably 2-15 because I do see them beating both of the bottom feeders of the NFC South this year, and then I do think ultimately they're going to end up 3-14 when I ran the whole season out. So it's going to be a bad year for them. And then finally, you're going to end with the 49ers, who I think are probably one of the more intriguing teams in this division. They could certainly end up being the division winners. They could finish anywhere in that 1 through 3 spot. Um, their ceiling, I think, is 13-3, just because they have a slightly easier schedule because of where they finished last year. And then the 49ers, they also have a 7-10 floor. Cause I don't think they're going to lose all that many games. Their 50-50 games include Denver, the Rams twice, Kansas City, the LA Chargers, Arizona twice, New Orleans, Miami, Tampa Bay, and Las Vegas. The question you have is, are we going to get Trey Lance or are we going to get Jimmy G? And if we get Jimmy G, they're probably going to be a decent team almost no matter what. He's led them to the playoffs any season that he has stayed healthy, and they've made it to the NFC Championship a couple of times under him and the Super Bowl once under him. So I don't know that he's a bad quarterback, but he's more of a game manager, and I think they obviously drafted Trey Lance to be the dynamic future for the team. And I think they have to start seeing what they spent the third overall pick last year on. So I do look for Trey Lance to at least start half of the season. If he's great, then they're probably going to be hitting that ceiling. If he's pretty bad, then they're going to be closer to the floor. And Jimmy G, they'll be glad to have him around, even though they have tried to trade him this offseason. Other questions are, is Deebo Samuel going to stay healthy? Because that offense runs through Deebo. If Deebo's not healthy, they're going to have a bad year. They did not do well when he wasn't playing last year. And then the other question is Elijah Mitchell going to be the star at running back? James Robinson a couple of years ago emerged for the Jacksonville Jaguars as an undrafted rookie who did really, really well. Then they drafted Travis Etienne, got hurt. Again, James Robinson did remarkably well last year, even under Urban Cryer. Is Elijah Mitchell going to be good for him this year? So that's another question, especially since they do a run-heavy offense. Notable additions to the team. Not a lot here in free agency. Charvarius Ward, George Odom, and Tyler Croft. Nothing special there. Their draft picks, they didn't have a first rounder this year, but they did take Drake Jackson out of USC. This is my favorite name in the draft just because I'm a Game of Thrones fan. Tyrion Davis-Price, he's a running back who should add just more depth. Probably since Debo's kind of the pseudo running back, pseudo receiver for him, it's going to be Debo most of the time with Elijah Mitchell, and then Davis-Price at number 3 on the depth chart. They also added Danny Gray at wide receiver, and then Spencer Burford as well in the 5th round. They did lose Raheem Mostert, Laken Tomlinson, Quan Williams, and Alex Mack finally retired, former Falcon there and former Cleveland Brown, all-pro center. So it's going to be a tough sled for them. But again, 13-4, I think is their ceiling. 7-10, I think is their floor. I do have them finishing 11-6 when I run it all out. So just to recap, it's going to be the Rams and the San Francisco 49ers that are going to be finishing 1-2. I think the Rams will hold the tiebreakers, but it wouldn't surprise me to see it go the other way around. Arizona could be a dark horse to finish with the best overall record in the division. I don't look for that to happen. I think they'll be 2 or 3, most likely 3 with a 9-8 record. And then the Seattle Seahawks, losing Russ is going to hurt you guys big time. Y'all are going to finish poorly this year, just expect it. Anything more than 3 or 4 wins should be a massive morale boost to you guys. But Drew Lock ain't the answer, and Geno Smith ain't the answer. But that's just what I think. I'd love to know what you guys think down in the comments below. That'll wrap up our NFC talk. I'm going to have a couple of fantasy football videos coming out in the near future, and then I'm going to hit the AFC pretty hard on their schedule predictions. I've been waiting to see what happens with the Deshaun Watson case before I hit the AFC because that's going to tremendously affect the AFC North division over there. But again, if you like the video, please hit the like button. Consider subscribing. It helps us out a lot. And until next time, rise up.